Hey family, welcome back. Marshawn Alano here, your favorite shift relationship strategist, where I help Black Christian women that are married or in long-term relationships to stop feeling disconnected and unloved and shift you to feeling heard, understood, and appreciated. Now, yesterday we talked about 7 reasons why our relationships fail, and I didn't want to leave you there. I only stopped the video because it was starting to get a little lengthy, but I had 14 reasons, and so I really want to make this part 2 of why we fail at our relationships, because the second half of these reasons definitely apply, and I don't want to leave them out. And then also, after looking over the list after I was finished, I was just like, cannot end it there. I need to come back to y'all, give y'all some more love, give y'all some more reasons, because maybe, just maybe, the 7 that I provided yesterday or whenever you watch this video did not correlate to where you're at in your relationship and why you're thinking that relationships fail. And so I really want to give you the other 7 here today. Sorry it's a bit windy out here, okay? But bear with your girl. I'm gonna give you 7 more today. So let's go ahead without further ado and jump right in. So the first reason why we fail is we focus on what we can get versus what we can give. Listen, there is so much out here that we must be willing to give to our relationship, give to our spouses, give to our children. But instead, because we're selfish, which was one of the things that I mentioned yesterday, because we are selfish, we have a tendency to think about what we can get from this person, what we can get from this relationship, what level we can attain while in this relationship with this person, versus allowing our hearts to truly open up, allowing the person to really come into our hearts and be of service, be giving more than we are receiving. Because listen, the Bible actually says it is better to give than it is to receive. And so if you are giving, if your spouse is giving, then guess what? The two of you cannot help but win, and you're going to win together. But you must be willing to give, not only to your spouse, also to the relationship. This means giving your time, this means giving your energy, this means giving your focus, this means giving your money, this means giving your patience, and the list goes on and on and on and on in order to have a healthy, blissful relationship. So if you're not a person that is a natural giver, right, then you need to start practicing giving more of few of the things that I just mentioned and then some, in order to create the relationship that you want to be a part of, that you are happy to be a part of, that you're willing to boast and put it out there and allow others to hear as well as see what you're speaking about, and how they also can show up in their relationships or in their own marriages as well. So be more of a giving person than you are a taker. The second thing that I want to say is we don't have a tendency to break the generational curses. Now, what do I really mean by breaking the generational curses? Well, sisters, here is what I actually mean by breaking the generational curses, right? There are some things, not even maybe, there are some things that happen in your relationship that you witnessed as a child yourself, based off of how your parents or your guardians and the environment that you grew up in, the things that you witnessed. And so because those were the things that you witnessed, you deem them to be normal, not realizing that a lot of things that we need to break when it comes to generational curses are toxic habits and toxic behaviors. So these are a part of the generational curses that you need to break. Breaking the toxic habits, breaking the toxic behaviors, so you can stop passing this misinformation or poor information and even toxic information down to your children and your children's children. Because if you're not getting better, then they're not seeing the best representative of yourself that they could possibly see. They're seeing a portion of who you are versus seeing the really loving person, a person that can actually interact with another human being, in this case the opposite sex, and actually live a blissful life where they can say, I want a relationship like that. And not pretending, not showing them all of the great without them seeing some of the bad per se, because we need to see some of the bad so we can see how we can handle situations like that in the future, and then how we can actually navigate through those things when they occur, because they will occur not only in your relationships but in your children's relationships and your children's children relationships. So we need to start to break the generational curses, and those things begin with us, because if you're not conscious and aware of what the toxic habits and behaviors were, then you're not going to be able to break them. And again, you're going to continue to pass on these toxic traits to your children and their children, and continuing the line of toxicity. So we don't realize that we must make a conscious effort to do better than our parents did with us. That's not knocking our parents, but we have so much information and statistics and research out here that there is no reason that we should treat our children as well as our spouses and significant others in horrible manners, because it has definitely been shown that these things come back and bite us in the butt later on, specifically showing up in how we respond and how we react, and also the way that our spouse or significant other is reacting and responding as well. It's usually toxic versus healthy habits and behaviors. So we must figure out how to break the generational curses, and I really just gave you a how, which is to figure out what are some of the things that you know that it just didn't sit right with you, or you hate it when you saw this thing, you hate it when it happened to you. Those are the things that you must make sure that you are not exposing your children and children's children to. So breaking the generational curses. The third thing is, this one is really for the women, which of course I'm speaking to you women, so it's befitting for this channel, which is when we have children, we have a tendency to put our children before our mates. And men are never going to say this, but they have a tendency, and this is actually a research thing as well. I just can't remember where I read it, but men have a tendency, when they took a secret survey basically, right? And you don't know who the men are, but it basically says that the men feel like they need to be in competition with the baby. Now, logically, they know that they cannot be in competition with the baby because the baby can't do anything. And so the mom or himself needs to step in to take care of the child. Now, intellectually, they know that. Logically, he knows that. But when it's deep-seated and he's really thinking about this, he gets jealous of the baby, because the baby is now taking away his baby, in this case, you. The baby is getting more time, more of your energy, more of your focus, more of your attention. And so you have to figure out ways to balance that new baby, and or if you continue to do that when the child is a toddler, moving on into elementary school, as well as getting older, you have to figure out ways to stop putting your children first before your mate, because you're not realizing that the child is going to grow up at some point and going to leave you, both of you. And if you have made it to the point where your child is now reaching graduation status, now you are sitting there scratching your head, because you're trying to figure out who is this other person across the table from you. Because after 18, 20 years, that's 2 decades that have passed with you putting your children first, or other people or other things first. And now literally you have to figure out, who are you? Because you have probably grown in ways, and he has probably grown in ways. And these are things that most people fail to talk about throughout the years, because things, life, emergencies, financial issues, deaths in the family, things started to occur, not realizing that it's actually pulling you both further and further apart. So really, if you guys make it to the part where your children are now grown and they're about to go off into their life, now you as the parents are having to reintroduce yourself to your spouse. And a lot of times it just doesn't work, because so many years and even decades, as I just mentioned, have passed. So instead of going through that in the next 20 years, depending on where you're at, right, in your life cycle, then you must not put the children before your spouse. Again, after a period of time when they're babies and can't do anything, that's something different. But as they grow, you have to grow and figure out ways to balance, to make sure that your spouse is getting just as much time, energy, and effort as you give your child, if not more. because that's who you want to stay connected to. It's also going to keep you two healthy and bonded, which also helps to break those generational curses that I just mentioned, because now the child is being able to see how to balance and be in life, be in a loving relationship, as well as watching the parents be on one accord when it even comes to disciplining the children, because children have a funny way of knowing how to separate the parents. Not that they're doing it on purpose. It's just if you two are not on one accord, he or she, oh, something just hit me in the head. If you two are not on one accord, then he or she, the child, can have a tendency to go ask you a question, right? When you're in a different room, you say, yeah. Then he comes back to the other parent and, oh, well, daddy said I can do it, but not realizing that the child asked you first, right? And because you said no, then they went to daddy, daddy said yes, and there's the division right there. Not necessarily doing it on purpose. The child just wants to get what the child wants, because the child literally is selfish. But before I move on from that, children do that. We do that. We have done that as children, because it really is about our self-preservation. So we have to be selfish. But when you get into a relationship, and especially a marriage, you have to figure out how to put that selfishness aside. So putting the kids before your mate. The next thing is you have a tendency to use sex as a weapon. And you don't want to use sex as a weapon, because if you are in a healthy sexual relationship with your spouse, then you don't want them to be begging you for sex all the time, because then they start to look outside and you can just open up another can of worms, if you will, allowing the eyes to wander. So even if you're mad, figure out where you two can sit down and have an adult conversation about, even if I'm mad and you want sex, that you don't shut your partner down because you are pissed off. Because one thing about it, by the time you two get in there and you're having a great time with one another, you know each other's bodies, that madness will turn off. And then guess what? You can try to have a conversation afterwards. Depending on what happens to the man, he might go to sleep afterwards. But the point is, it opens up the door to be more receptive when it's time to have the conversation about why it went downhill and why you two were not connecting prior to the act of having sex, okay? And trying to connect on that level. That is really big for most men. Is it every man? Of course not. Women fall into this category too, but it's more men than it is women that really, really need the sexual act, because that is their way of showing love as well as trying to connect with you. So please understand that, women, do not use sex as a weapon. If your man can be mad at you and still want to have sex with you, that is actually a really great sign, because that does not happen with every woman, right? It does not happen with every couple. Some men get mad, they shut down, they don't want to touch you, they don't want to see you, let alone lay next to you, or definitely not want to be around you as well as within your body cavity. Okay, let's keep it clean. Okay, so try not to, but really don't use sex as a weapon, because it's keeping the disconnection versus the connection. The fifth thing is not understanding each other's love language. And I'm sure you guys have heard about love language. This should not have been your first time. If you've been watching me for any amount of time, I talked about love languages before, right? And there's 5 of them. You really should know your spouse's top 3. Your spouse should know your top 3. Why 3? Because research has actually shown that when the two of you know and understand, as well as show love in the top 3 ways to each other, then you guys have a really healthy relationship. You understand one another. And guess what? A lot of those issues that make relationships fail can fall by the wayside just by you implementing and understanding and showing love to your spouse in the top 3 ways that they need love, right? And so what most people don't realize is when you show love, you're usually showing love the way that you want to receive it, right? And so your spouse is usually doing the exact same thing. He's showing you love the way that he wants to receive it. So I have this client, and she basically is complaining that her spouse buys her gifts. Now, she does like gifts, but because it's not one of her top 3, it doesn't really hit her where she wants to and where she feels love. But guess what? He loves gifts, right? And so because he loves gifts, now he's trying to win her back to show her love, if you will, via getting her gifts. But really what she wants is quality time. She wants to be touched. She wants to be held. She wants to, have deeper conversations. So their love language is a little bit different, but you must learn each other's top 3 love languages, so you can love one another, show one another love the way that your spouse wants it, as well as you sharing yours, right? So your spouse can know how to love you in the top 3 ways as well. Number 6 is any form of abuse can absolutely lead to the relationship failing, right? Physical, spiritual, financial. Did I say physical? Yeah. So emotional. That's the other one I was looking for. Any form of abuse can absolutely fail the relationship, because when you're getting abused by someone, right, you don't feel protected, you don't feel safe, and so those are absolutely things that women need to feel in the relationship. In order to want to stay with that guy, I must feel safe with you. I must be able to let down my guard with you. I must be able to look my ugliest with you, have my ugliest cry with you, and you not throw it in my face later on or judge me for being me, showing all of myself to you as the significant other, right? So don't I mean, literally don't do that. No form of abuse is going to keep you happy. And what abusers actually, why they're doing this, I mean, there's a multitude of reasons why, but the bottom line is it is a control thing that they're trying to do. So they're trying to control you emotionally when it comes to that. You might be trying to control the finances, which is where the abuse and finances come from. Control you spiritually. They want to be your God, even though he might not say it that way, but he wants to be your God, versus allowing you to really get in alignment with the way things should be in a healthy relationship. Which brings me to point number 7, because we have a tendency to leave God out of our relationships, and then we wonder why our relationships are failing. Now, if you are not a religious person, then this channel is not for you, because I talk about God a lot. So if you're here, especially if you made it this far in the video, then leaving or etching God out, and which is what they say ego is etching God out. And so if you are etching God out, if your ego is in play, then absolutely God cannot be the head of your household. So anytime we are leaving God out of our relationship and creating that 3-cord strand, which is the husband, wife, and then God, if God is not in there, at some point your rope will unravel, which is where the relationship failure comes into play. This happens a lot. One party in the relationship may be more religious than the other, and if that other person, the significant other, the spouse, never gets on board, especially when this is something that is very personal as well as very intimate for the spouse, if that other party does not get on board, then the relationship will fail at some point. It might not happen right away. It might not happen in the first year, 5 years, 10 years, but at some point, he or she, the main party who is into religion and spirituality, and specifically God, they're going to feel like they are not connected on a deeper level. Now, fun fact before I wrap this up is couples that actually include God into their relationship and even into their sexual relationship, and I know that can sound a little bit funny, but rock with your girl. They have better sex, they feel more connected, and they actually feel like they can ride or die through anything that happens or occurs in the relationship, because they know who they are and whose they are. And they have a tendency to pray together. They stay together even more because they know that they are co-creators of their life, and they're asking for permission as well as following their God-given purpose, instead of just doing things because they want to just do something, right? It's not all about them. They understand the alignment. It's God, husband, wife, child. They understand the alignment, and they like their family to be in that alignment. And those people actually stay together longer, have happier marriages specifically, and even are happier with their partner that they chose. So this is the final list of the 7 reasons why relationships fail. Definitely, if you have not watched the previous video, there are another 7 that do not run into this list at all. So there are 7 more reasons why relationships fail. So go ahead and check out that video if you have yet to do so. Again, this is part number 2, but I felt like I couldn't leave that off. So now if you need any help with your relationship or with your marriage, there is a link down in the description box below where you can go ahead and get your strategy conversation with me. It's bit.ly/help my relationship. Again, look for the link down in the description box below. I love you guys, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I will see you in the next video. Bye now.